Media, coming to you live from South Africa.
Welcome back to the Mid-Morning Show with myself, Nafisa Dangle. We're going to be in conversation with one of the authors from the anthology Lockdown Behind the Mask, which tapped into situations in COVID-19 through fictional stories to actually make us reflect and retrospect on the situations that we were in and what we could learn from it and in order to take us forward with the situations that we faced. One of the authors I'm going to be chatting to this morning is Yumna Samrod. She's a traveling teacher, a student, and a writer. She first traveled to Jordan at the age of 17, where she spent a year pursuing studies in classical Arabic. Her journey then led her to other parts of the Middle East, Europe, Asia, parts of Africa, and of course now back to Jordan, where she first began. Yumna has traveled to over 100 countries. She speaks almost 5 languages and is a previously published author. Her work as a teacher began with languages and Montessori, and now she runs play therapy and experiential learning workshops for her own startup organization called the Fruit Loops Fun Factory. Yumna loves working with children and words. She is passionate about education and languages and hopes to someday have her own center, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. She's going to be talking to us about her contribution towards this anthology and what it meant for her. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Nafisa?
Alhamdulillah, and yourself. Thank you so much for joining us on the Mid-Morning Show. It's such a great pleasure having you on to be able to speak and entice people into a different space regarding, writing as such. I think a lot of the times people don't realize what writing can do for you. So thank you so much for taking the time out to join us this morning.
Oh, pleasure for me. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk to us a little bit about yourself and your journey before we even get into the story itself.
Well, I've been for the duration of the lockdown. I've been here in Jordan. I arrived here in June 2019, and I started off by studying, continuing my studies in the Arabic language at the University of Jordan. My main purpose of coming here back to Jordan was to do some research on the possibility of continuing the project of the Fruit Loops Fun Factory. Mm-hmm. And of course, when the corona situation hit, everything came to a standstill. So I've just been juggling things in a different way, obviously, like everybody else, dealing with life under COVID laws, as we can say.
A very difficult situation indeed. As far as being stuck in a particular place with reading your story, I found it very interesting. You wrote about Aisha, a young woman, of course, who did not manage to get back to her family when COVID restrictions were imposed. I think it's a very interesting topic to bring to the fore because it makes us look at the situation from a very different angle as such.
Yes, definitely. Look, I look at it as something that is from Allah, as we should. There's reasons for everything that happens. He has his plan. He knows why we are where we are, when we are there, and what we will get from that experience. So it actually has been very rewarding, even if difficult and isolating. It's given me a new view of the value of family, the value, setting my priorities straight in a different way. Fortunately, I have a very loving and supporting family, and I've been traveling for the last 20 years, and this is the first time I couldn't just jump on a plane and be home in 8 or 9 hours. So as isolating and difficult as it is to not be able to travel or not have been able to travel for the duration of 2020, basically, it's also been a huge eye-opener, which is why I've named the story The Wake Up Call.
Right. I find that very interesting because the thing is, it's nice that you named it that because when I read a little bit of your piece, it taught us, many different aspects of life to actually reflect back upon and ask ourselves. And I think gratitude is also one of them to say that, we should be grateful for the people that we have in our lives and for the things that we have at this point in time, looking at others that are in worse situations that we're in. We're not as bad in a situation as some of the other people are, and then also it teaches us a lot of perseverance, going through challenges like this, to be able to reflect on ourselves and say, where are we right now? And being in solitude, I'm sure, must have not been one of the easiest things for you. I think at that point in time, you must have appreciated your family a whole lot more than before.
Yes, definitely. Look, solitude is not something that's ever scared me because I've spent large parts of my life in solitude, and with your travels, you're usually by yourself with your mind. At the end of the day, we all are by ourselves. We all have to face ourselves. But when you're in an environment where the situation of the pandemic is a unique situation, and if you're in a culture like the Jordanian culture, where it's very family oriented, as opposed to Europe or France, where people are quite individualistic. You feel the atmosphere where the families are together, and you're kind of just by yourself in your world, and you're very aware of the fact that families are together in this time.
Yeah.
So that's where like you say, the gratitude comes in. As well as the self-reflection of, hey, what have I been doing all these years without my family? And even if I have been doing something, has it been the right path? At the end of the day, it is Samoa, it's your journey, it's Maktub, it's written, and you accept it, you embrace it. And yes, you go through the challenges, you go through the perseverance and the patience, but it's a major lesson from Allah. You understand the values of Islam, the protection of the woman, the value of having a mahram. You see things differently. Again, my family is very, alhamdulillah, open-minded, well-traveled, very practicing Muslims. But I've always been the one who's been adventurous, free-spirited, and they've encouraged and supported that. I've been grateful for that. So in my struggle or in my journey, having this wake-up call that, hey, you know what? Maybe you have to check yourself a little bit on this point. And this is your personal struggle in understanding what you're facing in this lockdown. Everybody's facing something, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's financial issues, whether, whether they're actually infected, and whether it's loss of a family member. And my personal journey has really been focused on my family and actually not being with them, and not even having been able to be with them, which is very, very much an eye-opener. And I'm grateful for that. I really am.
Yeah, I think it
makes you reflect along the way.
It makes you reflect in many directions. A lot of the time, as human beings, naturally, sometimes we take things for granted. But when the absence is there, it does make you think and reflect, like you were saying. And it's nice in your story to see that there is a support structure in some way through the form of, connecting with a young child, and then that person becomes your so-called support structure, in the sense that that person is there to actually uplift your spirits and empower you in some way to make you feel as though there is someone there to help you get through those difficult times and the difficult periods, because as we know, COVID-19 was very difficult, and it still is.
Yes, definitely. Look, my passion for children is always been my driving force, my passion for education. I love the innocence of working with children. I love their ability to learn and to discover things. And during the lockdown, the children were really very much protected, kept at home. So you didn't even see that. You didn't even enjoy that energy of their presence.
Mm.
And in the story, when Aisha and Farah meet, it's a beautiful encounter for both of them because they, as we read along, we will discover that they developed this friendship, which they both really needed.
Yeah.
And they both really needed to enjoy that inner child, which they weren't getting an outlet for. So that's definitely the uplifting part of the experience of the story itself. And when you see like Allah says in the Quran, with the difficulty, there is ease. So noticing in the difficulty, in the hardship, there's a bright light here, there's a little glimmer here. And in the story, Sarah is that glimmer for Aisha.
That support structure, that should we say hope, to say that there are people out there that care about me, and here's one right here, and by us supporting each other, we can help each other grow in some way and overcome those challenges that we're facing at that point in time. And I think the story is very apt. It teaches us about endurance and of course also perseverance and reflection. And it teaches us to be strong in some way, to say that irrespective of the situations we're in, we are going to overcome it by helping each other and creating that Ubuntu. And this is what has been happening in South Africa. Things have changed in many a direction where people have become support structures for each other, which I found phenomenal because, well, prior to that, everybody was so caught up in their little routines.
Yes, we go back basics. And for Aisha in the story, Sarah is going back to the basics of what she enjoys in life. By seeing this child, by interacting with her, by going for a walk with her, she's reminded of her own enjoyment and satisfaction and purpose in life, which is her joy with children, that she draws, really draws her purpose from. And remembering, like you say, it's the hope, but it's also the reminder that it's temporary and there are things happening in between.
Yeah.
For the so-called disaster, and it's a blessing in disguise, actually.
Most definitely.
I know a lot of people might look at COVID in a very negative way. I don't necessarily have a negative view of it. I feel that it's very much a blessing in disguise for the world to go back to basics.
Most definitely.
To realize what is important in terms of consumption, in terms of relationships, in terms of self-growth, in terms of our habits, in terms of our relationship with ourselves, and especially our relationship with Allah.
Yeah,
and
sure.
so I really see it as a blessing in disguise.
I so agree with you. I mean, it's grounded us in many directions, and every single time that I'm on the show, there's 3 words that I use, and that's the R's. It's reflect, retrospect, and reconnect. And that's what it's taught us. Allah has taught us to reflect on our lives, retrospect on where we'd like to head to, and of course, reconnect with our families and our Creator. And that's what it's about. And I love the idea that I spoke to you about the word wake up call, because that's what I think it was. Definitely one huge one. I want to thank you so much for joining us. We seem to be running out of time. What message would you like to leave us with this morning?
I would like to tell everybody to write, if you can write. If you know how to hold a pen, write, use it. We have a lot of social media and we so use technology, but the beauty of writing, it's whether you share it or not, it's very therapeutic. I've been writing ever since I could hold a pen. I have journals, cupboard full of journals, and it's a very useful technique to offload, to share your soul, to pour out, to process your day. And it's something we learn, and it's something that, like the Prophet ﷺ, he was illiterate, but the words were revealed to him. And there's a blessing in being able to pour your soul out on a piece of paper. And I always tell my friends also that are in hardship, if you don't know who to talk to, and yes, you talk to Allah, but also talk to yourself in words, because when you process it in ink, it comes out of you.
Yes, I
It's
so
not just
agree with
air
you.
like when you speak in words.
Yes,
You know?
you remind
And you
you
don't ever
remind
have
me.
to read back on that.
You remind me of my one of the life coaches that came in, and he said to us, the best thing that you can do is do positive talk to yourself. So I agree so much with what you're saying right now. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning and inspiring us to be able to reflect and think about the spaces we're in and how we can better ourselves and be grateful. That's the word. And I'm so thankful that you've joined us this morning to be able to reflect back on the word gratitude.
Thank you very much. I like the 3 hours as well. It resonates, that's for sure. And inshallah, Allah guide us all and protect us all and keep us on the straight path with our priorities in place.
Ameen.
And our hearts soft in a difficult time.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you nothing but the best going forward. And once again, thank you so much for joining myself and the team. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Yumna Samrod, one of the authors of Lockdown Behind the Mask, talking to us about reflecting on the word gratitude. We're going to go for a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back with you in a minute.